Hi, everyone. So we are all students at Cal State Long Beach taking Liberal Studies 100. So my name is Jillian.
My name's Paulina.
I'm Jaylene.
I'm Sydney.
And I'm Nancy.
We're doing a project where we need to discuss a problem within the school system. We all felt really passionate about the school to prison pipeline. So first off, what even is the school to prison pipeline?
So the school to prison pipeline is basically where underfunded schools utilize strict discipline, causing students to become more likely to become adult criminals. And so there's a list of different ways that they use strict discipline.
So usually these can be seen with the zero tolerance policies that were created. So zero tolerance policies within the school to prison pipeline are one of the main reasons why students are being suspended or expulsion at such a high rate, And so these can be seen with minor infractions, like if a student carries a weapon to school, engages in threatening forms of physical, verbal behavior, bullying other students, and if they have drugs and alcohol on them, they will be suspended or expelled. So usually these affect lower income schools more than higher income schools. So lower income schools will have harsher punishments than the higher income schools due to the zero tolerance policies. And main targets of the zero tolerance policies were students of the LGBTQ plus, people of color, people with mental, learning, and physical disabilities, as well as people struggling with their mental health.
Guys, the zero tolerance policy, can we just talk about how pointless it is?
I know, yeah, I agree.
It does nothing to benefit students. It doesn't teach them the lessons that schools think it does. Getting suspended is like a vacation.
Yeah, I agree. And keeping kids out of school instead of if they do something wrong and then you're taking them out of school, what are they going to learn from it? How are they going to improve from their own actions? If you take them out of school, they're not learning anything. They think it's a vacation and they're not going to change.
Yeah, when I was in elementary school, I never got expelled or suspended, but I knew that people who got suspended, they would be happy with it because they're just missing out on school. I'm what's the point? You're supposed to be in school learning.
Same, all my friends, we had in-school detention as well, instead of just getting suspended or something like that. And even that, the teachers in there were pretty chill. So if you got in-school suspension, you just got to hang out in a classroom all day and do nothing.
Yeah, and even in my own middle school, I knew somebody who was suspended, and they did in-school suspension instead, and all they did was sit in the school office. They didn't do anything. And then in my high school, because they had such a big suspension problem, they had to start sending kids to continuation schools because they would just get suspended to skip school.
Yeah, and that, how does that benefit the student at all? It doesn't.
Yeah, there really is no point.
A similar example that I have is probably when I was in high school. We used to have uniforms, and so whoever violated the dress code, they would get in class detention. So they would literally get the students out of class just to be in detention, and they literally missed the whole lesson. So I feel that's really pointless.
Yeah, especially over a dress code. I don't think those benefit their learning either.
Oh, dress code.
Yeah, dress code is a whole nother.
Yeah, whole nother thing. Don't even get me started.
Yeah, I feel a lot of the discipline things that they do kind of takes time out of the education that could have been used for more important things. Even doing those random backpack searches, those took up 15 minutes of class every single day, because they would just have those random backpack searches at my school literally every day, almost every class I went to.
Really?
Yeah, so they would come in and they would pick out a handful of random students, and it just took time away from the lessons that we had just to check our backpacks, and most of the time there wasn't really anything in our backpacks.
Wait, did you go to schools where there was a lot of police and closed off campuses, you weren't supposed to leave?
Yeah, like there was no leaving. There's like security at a lot of places, I guess. It was there was like a lot of strict discipline, I guess, because I didn't realize like not everyone had the backpack searches and stuff until I guess I talked to you guys and didn't like I didn't realize that that wasn't
Yeah,
normal.
we didn't
Yeah.
have backpack searches in my high school or elementary school or middle school. We didn't have any backpack searches unless like there was the rare cases we had to go on lockdown. Um, but other than that, there wasn't a lot of police present, and we were open campus. There's like no gate at all. There's no walls or anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, in my sorry, Jillian, in my high school, they didn't just do backpack searches. If they thought you had something, they'd even pat you down and try to do like body searches to find anything. And like I thought that was crazy.
Oh yeah, they would do that and like they would like make you empty out your pockets. I don't know. It's just like it took so much time and it really didn't do much.
Yeah, my school we had backpack searches too. It wasn't like like relevant until I got to like high school. Did I till I saw like people getting searched, and there was like I went to two different high schools, and both of them there was backpack searches. They had like dogs come around the classrooms every now and again to sniff the students, um, which was like really crazy, low-key kind of traumatizing, to see that in school. Um,
Yeah,
I
and it's
think like
ironic that they did this just so they could suspend you and get you out of the school.
yeah. And most of the time they never found anything, or like if students had things, because I had friends that would like have stuff that could get them suspended, and most of the time they would just like hide it or find ways to work around the whole search thing. So it's like, why are they
mhm.
why are you here?
Yeah, like there was only one time I went through a backpack search, and it was because some girl forgot her phone or she lost it. And thankfully, they didn't check my backpack because she ended up finding her phone in a textbook. So I'm just like, so maybe it was kind of like not unnecessary, but kind of like they had a good reason why they were doing backpack searches because they thought that somebody like put in their backpack. But personally, I kind of felt like maybe they were like violating our own privacy of what we have in our backpack. So
Mhm.
it's kind of like, you know, kind of violating.
Yeah, we're like supposed to feel safe in school, but like there's no trust, and they're like violating our privacy and all
And
that.
it makes it seem so much similar to like an actual prison because they also get randomly searched and
Oh
sniffed.
yeah, and then I know some schools do have what's that? Not metal detectors that they have to walk through
Yeah, yeah.
and stuff like that.
Yeah, it seems like they're almost like looking for a problem to have with the students when there really is none. And I guess for right now we can compare like the low income versus high income schools. I guess we could talk about that now and how in the lower income schools it does have more of like that discipline and it seems like they're looking for a problem, which of course they're more likely to find problems in low income schools if they're taking this much time out of our education to look for a problem, whereas in higher income schools they kind of just get away with a lot of things.
Mhm.
Yeah, they like are looking for a reason to criminalize students in low income areas, and that usually tends to be people of color and other minority groups.
Yeah, and it's crazy how these students end up in the lower income schools to begin with. Um, there was one article that I read, and it discussed that this the school districts are essentially just like new age segregation because our those lower income communities are usually more so people of color, and then when you're in the school district, the school you go to is based off of where you live. So if you already live in like a poor community, you're forced to go to a poor school, and that cycle just continues.
Yeah, a lot of the articles I read, like researching the school to prison pipeline, it does greatly affect people of color. So, like how you mentioned the segregation, and also read that it also, I don't know how to say it. a lot of people of color get misdiagnosed as special needs students when they're not. They just didn't have those opportunities or receive the quality education that people in like higher income schools did.
Yeah, so basically like what you guys are saying is like how since like the school to prison pipeline and stuff is mostly an epidemic in low income schools, then low income families are going to continue to be low income, and then higher income are going to continue to be higher income, and there's not really like a way out of it. Like you're kind of born into the life already.
Yeah.
Yeah, they can take away like opportunities from you that you could have had to change that, I guess. And yeah, I see your point where they kind of misdiagnose like all these kids just because of like where they're from and just how it impacts their behavior, I guess. So like even one of my mom's friends, she works as a teacher's assistant, and it's in a more low income schools, and the parents like they don't really know why their child is performing the way they do or something. And my mom's friend, or my friend's mom, she was like, the student's perfectly fine, like everything, like they're really good at learning and stuff, but they don't really know how to diagnose the students and stuff, and they put them in like special classes, I guess, right away without actually looking at what the actual problem is.
And it's really difficult because at the same time there are parents that really do want to better their child, but then at the same time it's kind of like there are times that they're opposite.
Yeah, and then this actually brings me back to like an article that I read for this project, and it was about school imposed labeling and labeling the students and how this affected how they even perceive themselves and how they wanted to get an education. And then if they were labeled poorly, they didn't want to learn anymore because it was harder. And this mainly affected like students of color, especially the male students. They would be labeled by the teachers, and then when they were labeled, they were given increased suspension rates, and they were more likely to drop out of school because they felt that they were also the label, instead of seeing past that and seeing past what the teachers felt like they were.
Yeah, I read articles that mention that too, where they didn't necessarily, or in some cases, like they did use like derogatory terms, but in most cases they would just use their word choice towards people of color, or in another article I read, like LGBTQ, if like a person who identified as male acted, quote, more feminine, they would use words like "don't be sassy with me," stuff like that, labeling them in a non-direct way, but the student was aware that they were being labeled by the teacher.
But at the same time, I feel like it's also like the teacher's own fault, because instead of them learning from this experience or like growing and being more respectful towards their students, they kind of just stick with how they grew up and like the words that was surrounded by them. And I feel like it's something that they need to do better about.
Oh yeah. Like in my high school, there was this one teacher, and it was our English class, and we were talking, I don't know what we were talking about, and we were talking about pronouns, I think, and you know how some people identify as they, them. Well, the whole class was like, yeah, if people identify as with they, them pronouns, then people should respect that. But the teacher was all like, no, um, that's not how it works. They, them shouldn't be used. I'm like, the whole class was arguing with the teacher, saying, yeah, you could just be like, they went to the store. You don't have to say he or she went to the store. But they weren't respecting that. They didn't even want to acknowledge that they, them could be used as pronouns.
Yeah, I feel like they're too stubborn on like the old learnings instead of like what's changing, because I feel like over time things have been evolving within the school system. So I think people need to understand.
I think so too. I think like school staff and teachers also have to like change their ways of thinking as the generations keep going by.
I feel like now that we've talked about like our own personal experience, should we talk about the Reddit post that you made, Paulina? So basically, One of our teammates, Paulina, created a Reddit post and she asked for examples for unreasonable suspensions. And some of the people decided to share with us. So thank you to those who shared. So one of them was, I got suspended for a day because I couldn't stop laughing at a stupid joke. Suspension for that instead of telling me to stop or stand outside was ridiculous, but I didn't mind taking a day off. What do you guys think of that?
I think that that's completely irrational just to be suspended for laughing because you couldn't stop laughing at a joke.
Yeah, and I think that like also shows the zero tolerance policy and how that's an issue because this kid's just laughing at a joke, and because of that, they get to miss out on a whole day of learning.
But it's
Yeah,
kind of
even
sad. Sorry.
oh, sorry. I was just gonna say, like, even the student themselves was like, oh well, at least I get a day off. Like,
Yeah,
they don't see it as a punishment.
I agree. I was gonna say, like, it's really sad that they don't mind taking a day off.
Oh yeah, but I think a lot of kids, this is like K through 12, so I think they didn't mind, but they're not seeing, the school doesn't see that, oh, it's not benefiting the student or the school.
Okay, so here's another example. Someone says, I got suspended for fighting. It was a short suspension, but I always remember that. Honestly, didn't teach me anything though, just funny. Opinions?
Yeah, so that kind of is just like how, oh, I didn't mind taking a day off. You kind of see the pattern in the students.
Yeah. Or like in the article I read, it talks about how this person said, "Oh, I got suspended for fighting," and then they just got suspended, but they didn't learn anything. Rather than if they talked with the student they fought with and maybe a teacher or some counselor, and they talked about what happened, why did this fight start, and then possible solutions, they just got suspended right away.
But at the same time, I kind of agree, like that was a good reason to be suspended, but I feel like maybe that it could have been taken differently, maybe towards detention or I don't know. It just depended.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or
Okay.
I also feel like just communicating with the students more, which is I think like what the school lacks, is the communication with the students, I guess, where they could have learned more from the situation and being suspended rather than seeing it as a day off from school.
Yeah, and that I also agree. Like, as I said before, suspension I don't think does anything. And then they said it was funny, like, oh, I was suspended from school, I got a day off. It's not teaching them anything. It's more of, oh, we don't want to bother with them, so we're just going to kick them out for a day.
And I feel like it's also like the teacher's fault in a way because we're not really understanding why they act like this sort of way. So maybe this student was probably provoked by someone, and instead of kind of just walking away and ignoring it, they took it as more an aggressive way. So it's kind of like we need to properly understand why students react towards this way instead of the other way.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the next example is I got suspended for throwing a rock at a hill back in second grade.
Again, the zero tolerance policy, like what there's no need to be suspended for throwing a rock at a hill.
I know, and they're second graders, like they don't know. They could have just been taught instead of like, oh, just don't come to school.
Or like,
Yeah.
oh, or they could just have been warned, like, don't throw a rock at a hill. I don't know what throwing a rock at a hill is gonna do, but they could have just been warned instead of getting suspended.
Yeah.
And, or you can go. You can go.
Oh no, it's okay. I was just agreeing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that actually, I know I probably told you this story before. So, second grade, that's crazy. My nephew, before he was diagnosed with severe ADHD, in kindergarten, he was maybe suspended twice a week because the teacher did not want to deal with him. And because my sister was younger, because she was in her 20s, so when my sister was younger, they wouldn't take her seriously because she was younger, and then she had to fight the school in order to keep him in school because they did not want to deal with him until even after he was diagnosed.
Wow. I think,
That's upsetting.
yeah, I think I have kids in my class who had like some learning disability or mental disability, and I think there's just a lack of resources at schools to help students like that. Because I remember this one kid, I'm not sure what was going on, but the teacher just made him sit in the back of the class by himself. Like um there would be tables in the back, not desks, just a big table in the back, and the teacher would make him sit in the back by himself.
Yeah, and
Okay.
I feel like these things discourage kids from wanting to learn. And then, like for zero tolerance policies and like in school to prison pipeline, if they're not encouraged to learn and they drop out, and it just brings them back to the pipeline, and they're not getting the help that they need.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Like, what's the issue with all teachers trying to exclude kids with learning disabilities? Like, they're creating a really bad environment for them. Like how you mentioned, it causes their lack of motivation to continue with school. Why are they excluding them?
Okay, so I made a Reddit post and I asked, let me go to the question. So I basically explained what the school to prison pipeline. I said, if you're unaware of what the school to prison pipeline means, it's a process through which students are pushed out of schools and into prisons. Students of minority groups, and like we said, people of color, disabled, special needs, LGBTQ, immigrants, etc. Our students who come from low-income areas are disproportionately targeted by teachers and school staff, given harsh discipline, and are hyper-criminalized, leaving them not to feel safe in schools and feel targeted, which may result in dropping out or delinquency. And then I listed some examples of what this means. So policing in schools, having some type of wall all around the school, screening metal detectors like how we just talked about, drug tests, backpack checks, and then targeting LGBT students who are showing public displays of affection, PDA, and ignoring that they are getting bullied, or staff using words that can label the student in a negative way. Again, possibly resulting in fighting, delinquency, suspension, expulsion. And then for students of color or primarily Black male students, they get hypercriminalized, as we mentioned, and for misbehaving, and they become target because of racial bias. That was basically the gist of the question I asked on Reddit, and here were some of the responses. One person said that my high school did not allow a lesbian couple to do a promposal during lunch in front of everyone, but they did it anyway and they had their poster taken. Meanwhile, heterosexual couples faced no issues when doing this. We also had a police officer at our school who was on duty during school hours and would stop people if they looked suspicious. People are always being accused of having drugs and no one was really trusted. My high school was mostly Latinos, so there was never really any racial issues of my knowledge. What do you think about that?
See, that's what we were talking about earlier about, you know, these students are being treated like criminals. Oh, you're suspicious. Oh, what are you doing? Why are you here? They're at school. They're supposed to be learning. Why are they being targeted?
Yeah, and it just reminded me of an article that I read, like school to prison pipeline and LGBTQIA plus, and how they get punished or like called out because they're quote different from the norm. So when this person said my high school did not allow a lesbian couple to do promposal during lunch, but they were completely fine with heterosexual couples doing that same thing, which is crazy because they're students. It doesn't matter who they like or what it's promposal is a promposal.
It's for fun.
I know.
I
So
agree.
like doing something harmless, just like any other heterosexual couple, they're just people, but they were being called out because they were a lesbian couple.
Yeah, and if they're going to be treated differently by the staff of the school, how do you think the other students are gonna look at them. Like, it's not fair. They shouldn't be treated like that. They can do what the others can do. There's no difference.
Okay, moving on to the next response. This was similar to Sydney, your story. It said, my brother had undiagnosed autism and anxiety and was constantly treated as a naughty child by teachers. He was suspended often, usually for destruction of school property and getting into fights with teachers and students, but never expelled. My mom also suspects he was bullied due to his weight, but that's out of the question. So, when he was diagnosed, the teachers found it difficult to change their ways since he was in his last year and was pretty infamous, and he couldn't even be alone in a room with one of them. School triggered his anxiety so much that he was usually sick before school. My mom eventually thought he can't just miss this much school because he's anxious, and had him mostly homeschooled, and he'd go to school for certain lessons such as engineering where they used equipment that they couldn't afford in homeschooling. His grades improved and his anxiety levels went down.
Yeah, so I feel like this is just another example where the teachers don't really know how to handle the students and kind of just leave them aside, I guess, instead of trying to help fix the issue and just put labels on them.
Yeah, and I think this goes back to mentioning how there's like a lack of resources, or I don't think like general teachers know how to go around students with learning disabilities. And so maybe that's a problem too, which could be addressed.
Yeah, and like how they said, their brother was stressed and had anxiety and would get sick before school because of the way that the school had like treated them.
him, yeah.
And like and the minute that he was taken out of the school, he probably wanted to learn more. His grades improved and he was less anxious to be learning. Like, what kind of environment is that school if the student is too sick to learn?
Like they became sick because they were so nervous to come to school.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I feel like it's really common within a lot of students, even if they just people by color go through those kind of situations just because like they feel different. They don't feel like they're it's like their second home. They feel very excluded from one another. So I feel like they don't really know how to act because they're not surrounded by something that they're used to.
Mm-hmm. Okay, moving on to another response. This one has like multiple examples, so we can like go one by one. So this person said, my school was made up of mainly Hispanic/Latino students and people of color, but the staff was not. I definitely feel that contributed to some of the conflict. So on one occasion, I remember witnessing a teacher get angry with some soccer students because they had to play a game. She let them know that they could not make up the assignment when the student athletes are always allowed to. The conversation escalated and she told these two soccer players that they could never amount to anything and that they would become truck drivers. This was my senior year and these two students were Latinos. That one is shocking.
Yeah, completely stereotypical, really really upsetting and disrespectful.
Yeah, because you think about it, if they were being labeled like this in their school, how do you think those students felt? Like, do you think they'd want to come to school? I feel like,
yeah, like
teachers expect you, oh, you need to come to school, you need to learn, you need to do this, and you have to like it. But if they're being treated this way, why would they want to come to school and get an education?
Yeah, and I feel like here you could see like unnecessary discipline where they're not allowed to make up the assignment when as student athletes they should be allowed to. So I guess it's just another thing where these disciplines are kind of impacting their education for things that are harmless, like they shouldn't be disciplined for.
And I think like for most schools, or at least in mine, student athletes are usually like allowed to like make up exams or homework just because they do miss out on some classes to go for games or something like that. So I feel like this teacher, it was like racially motivated what they said, and they shouldn't have said anything like that.
Yeah, and I feel like maybe like soccer was one of the reasons they liked school and like participated in stuff, and just because of, I guess it is racist because of the stereotypes that they're saying, like, oh, you're just gonna amount to this or whatever. I guess just like taking away something that they actually like about school and disciplining them for it, just it's harmful more than like, beneficial.
But they also added that this same teacher would often send this Black student as well as soccer players to the office, often for not good reasons. I always felt like they could get away with less. So yeah, they were the teacher targeted Latinos, and I'm guessing, I'm not sure if it's one Black student or multiple, but what do you do with teachers like that?
I don't know what you do with teachers like that, but obviously they are not a good teacher, and they're just sending these kids, if back to the pipeline, if they're not gonna get, if they don't want to get an education and they're being discouraged, what is that going to do for them?
Okay, I'll move on to the next point that this person made. They said, I had an ASB teacher who, I don't know if she knew it or not, was prejudiced. Someone called her racist outside of class, so she got worked up, began to cry, and put us all in a circle and said, look at all these different shades. In my opinion, different shades of white, but okay. Not the best way to foster communication. The same teacher would often be very hard on Black candidates, often testing them when our other students were not tested at all. And then it looks like they added, an amazing classmate applied and did great during their ASB interview, but was not accepted because she was an ASB president friend, and that would distract her. Frankly, I think it was relevant to say that they were both, the president and candidate were Black. This was upsetting because most people in the class had their close friends there, so it was kind of a double standard. Let's see, someone called the teacher racist, and so she began to cry. Um, I don't know. What do you guys think?
I honestly don't know either. I honestly feel like this teacher is racist, and if she's treating the kids like this, she should not be a teacher. And her way of like, look at all these different shades, but just like the person said, different shades of white. It wasn't the best way to talk about race, and like it wasn't the best way to approach it. And like if she like she wouldn't let the ASB president's friend join ASB because it would distract her. I feel like that's weird. And both of the president and the candidate were Black, so she probably was discriminating against her students.
Yeah, this one's a hard, like, this one's a hard one because I have no idea what the teacher was thinking, or because putting, if a student's saying, oh, like, I think what you're doing is like prejudiced or racist, and then she like just makes the students go into a circle and look at all these different shades, that doesn't it doesn't
help fix anything
or make her not prejudiced just because she has students of different color, what it said mostly what different shades of white in her classroom. That does nothing. But
I feel like instead of her crying, she should have just acknowledged it. Because if someone ever says something like that, you have to realize, hey, if what I'm saying, is it offending others? Is it racist? Is it stereotypical? I need to realize that and take accountability for my actions, and maybe apologize to my students and ask them what I can do better. Learn from that instead of crying, in my opinion.
no, I think you're right. Okay, moving on to the next point. It said, a teacher made fun of a classmate's hair when she had it up on a ponytail, called her hair nappy, tried to say it was a joke later on. Also, he was well known for having anti-LGBTQ views and would not bring that into the class. As far as I know, he still works there.
Ooh, yikes. He called her hair nappy. That's shouldn't even be like used, right? That's such a derogatory term to like the Black community. And it's crazy that a teacher would say that to a student.
And then try to play it off as a joke, like realizing, oh, what I said was not, instead of like addressing it, saying, oh, I did say something wrong. I apologize.
Exactly. Like it wasn't a joke to the student, and if they were offended by it, like he should have apologized.
Yeah, especially instead of blowing, oh, it's a joke. Why? No, it's clearly if your student's being affected by it, and absolutely should be, it's a derogatory term, then you can't say, oh, it was a joke, because clearly it wasn't to the person you were aiming at it.
And it said like tried to play it off as a joke. The teacher probably realized, oh, I did say something wrong. But
yeah, the teacher knew what he was doing. There was no way he would just say that.
Yeah, like you should have realized, like, is that gonna make her laugh? I mean, him or her laugh, or is that going to make them like feel affected? Like at the same time, it's kind of like you were born this way. Like I'm not gonna change anything about myself just to please you or for you to compliment me or for you to insult me. Like if you have nothing nice to say, then just don't say it at all.
And I think what bothers me is like all these examples, the teacher, they probably say these things without being aware, like they're not thinking before they say it, and then they're unaware that what they said is racist or prejudiced. And it's got to be hard to go to school with teachers like that.
Yeah, like the students. Oh, sorry.
Oh, I just have a quick thing. Yeah, and I don't even think you can't say he wasn't aware, because the minute the students brought it up, oh, it's a joke, he played it off. So there's no way you can't be that clueless about this.
Yeah, and I feel like it makes the students feel unsupported, especially when teachers can get away with all this and saying these things about the students and making jokes while other students are getting like suspended for laughing at jokes. And they probably feel like they have like no voice or no like say in how they're treated, because they'll easily just get disciplined, like, oh, you shouldn't be disrespecting the teacher, here's a suspension.
Okay, and lastly, it said, I feel like this issue even extended to staff. There were like 4 teachers who were visibly people of color. I remember hearing the vice principal telling another staff gossiping at the time say about a Spanish teacher, I don't know why the students call him profe. It's not like he has a PhD. It doesn't matter if they do that in Mexico. We're in America. So it even goes all the way to the staff, like people of color who are staff.
Yeah, I mean, like in my school, like since I'm Latina, like I'm usually always like whenever I saw my Spanish teacher, I'd be like, oh, hi profesora, like that, because it's such a common thing in like Mexico to say something like that. Yeah, and it's like we don't usually say like teacher, which would be maestra in Spanish. We usually just call him profe because it's so commonly used over there. So and then also whenever we're in the Spanish class, it feels like it's like our second home. So it's kind of like we're used to that, but it's kind of like affecting us in a way, because it's like, why are you making us feel different?
Yeah, like even in my school, and my school is like majority white students, they would even still call the Spanish teachers profe and stuff like that, because that's just what's used in Spanish. And so for the vice principal, like higher up than the teacher, to say that if this is not Mexico, we're in America.
Okay, but the fact that America is filled with immigrants, so like
I know.
So, I don't understand that term. We are in America.
Yeah, and then this person finishes that off. Their response was saying, I definitely do not feel safe, especially in my last 2 years. I'm like, Yeah, the schools, the teachers, the environment.
Yeah, if I were them, I would also not feel safe in my school.
I probably wouldn't even want to go to school at all.
Yeah,
And
Yeah.
even not just students with learning disabilities, it can be seen with like most students if they're being labeled, like if students of color are even being labeled, and they keep on getting suspended for small infractions, they're not going to want to learn either. And then if they're not wanting to learn, they're just going back to the pipeline.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think like as you're talking about labels, like being labeled before you're even old enough to like know who you actually are, you're basically told who you are and who you're going to grow up to be. Like, oh, with the zero tolerance policy and everything, like all these people are stereotyped and labeled, I guess, as like future criminals, I guess, as it is. So while they're in school, they're like, oh, well, it's okay, it doesn't matter, I'm going to grow up to be a criminal anyways. And they kind of don't want to live past those expectations. They just grow into their labels instead of trying to find out who they are and see their potential.
exactly. Like, what else are students supposed to think when that's what they're experiencing? They're experiencing teachers that don't care and they don't want to like help them. And then they're going to schools that resemble prisons and make them feel like they're already there anyways. And then they're getting kicked out of the school. So,
Yeah, it's just not good. It's like very unmotivated,
mm,
I don't know, discouraging to go to that environment all the time.
exactly.
Okay, so we talked about all these scenarios, all these responses that we got from people. What are possible solutions?
So like in articles that I read, um, they want to encourage the schools in order to like coordinate with real psychiatric counseling and social work services that will help the students. Because like even with school counselors, they're not really counselors. They're there to get the kids out of the school and into college. I don't feel like I've ever seen a school counselor that actually helped with a student.
Yeah, same. I know for like in my school, like elementary, middle school, high school, counselors didn't really help, and people did not want to share like their problems with the counselors because I just don't, yeah, the counselors didn't do much.
And I feel like the budget that these schools are getting from the district, it needs to be some part of it should be towards, social workers and more psychologists. So then we can help and better our students. So then they're able to graduate.
Yeah, like instead of funding like having all this school police and everything, they should put that money towards people that can help like the students mentally, because that's probably where they're struggling more and why they do what they do or act how they act.
Yeah, and if they're being punished for struggling and they can't get the help that they need from the school and they can't get the help at home, where are they supposed to get help? And if they can't get help, they probably don't want to be in school or learn, and that just sends them back to the pipeline.
Yeah, so maybe like providing training of some sort to talk about some of the problems like with students who have mental, physical, or learning disabilities, how to go around that, and what else?
And just make
And
our
I think
teachers. Mhm.
or I think we should give the teachers training. Like as you can see in like all the responses from the Reddit post, these teachers did not know what they were doing. They were being actively racist, homophobic, things that affect the students in their education. If the students don't feel like they're welcomed there, why would they go to school?
Yeah, I agree. I feel like teachers, yes, they need training and be more aware, but it never hurts to also ask some opinions from their own like from their own students to kind of get their perspective on certain things, make them feel more included on what the teachers can do better for them.
Yeah, in one of the articles I read, they came up with like recommendations, obviously, because I don't think that this can completely be solved, but there are steps we can implement into the school system. and it said like addressing the school climate, so investing in professional training and development for teachers and administrators, and engaging in partnerships and community engagement with students and family, because a lot of the teachers just tend to focus like in the classroom, or a lot of teachers who are in low income areas aren't usually from that community, and so they literally are just teaching in the classroom and then go home, instead of like being involved with the community there and the students and their families.
Yeah, and while we're also talking about like educating teachers more on like people with that need extra help, we can also talk about how like teachers should also be more educated on Black Americans, or also like just people of color, and understanding their students more, because it'll help like people, teachers with like these set stereotypes or racist teachers. It can help them to let go of those stereotypes and how to better handle their students, rather than just throwing disciplines at them, which can also help the school to prison pipeline like decrease.
Or like another solution, I actually read it from an article called Engaging Latina Students in the Secondary English Classroom, a step toward breaking the school to prison pipeline, where a teacher who actually decided to kind of change up the curriculum and add current events that are happening now. So then more students feel more comfortable and also relatable to what's going on in the classroom. So then they are able to really share their perspective and their opinions.
Yeah. And I would just like to mention that the articles we are mentioning in this podcast will be listed in the description.
Alrighty, guys. So overall, we discussed the school to prison pipeline, the issues regarding it, things like the zero tolerance policy, lower income schools, teachers that are benefiting their students, and then that really, with that environment, also students being put into schools that resemble prisons. They're faced with security, backpack searches. It really gives them no hope that they've got anything better going for them besides prison. So if we do things like educating our teachers, creating better programs, we might be able to help lessen this epidemic and get students to realize their potential and that they can do so much more than what they believe. Thank you guys so much for listening. Make sure to comment like any of your opinions, your thoughts, your ideas. Share this podcast with your friends. You can post it on TikTok, on Instagram. My name is Jillian.
My name is Paulina.
I'm Julie, sorry.
I'm Sydney.
And I'm Nancy.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. And don't forget to give it a like and comment your thoughts below.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.